Well, I'm Phil Nico, founder of Legendary. Thank you for coming on the call today. Today's call, very succinctly, is about a training grant that the state of Louisiana issues, and it's called the Small Business Employee Training Grant. It's from the Louisiana Workforce Commission, and it's because you pay unemployment tax for your employees, okay? And so today, I want to frame our time up together. I'm going to talk we're going to give you information for about 30 minutes. We're going to do about 10, 15 minutes of QA, and we'll do about 10, 15 minutes of just wrapping everything up and talking about next steps and what could be for you guys, okay? I've invited as my guest, Yvette Choate with M&A Safety, who they have a safety training company, but they also are grant writers and administrators for this grant. And then also Brandon Bollinger, the CEO of Gulf Crane, among many other businesses, and they have utilized this grant for over 10 years. Let me tell you a little bit about Legendary. What is Legendary Leadership Consultants? Who are we? We do organizational consulting, executive coaching, speaking and training, events. About 5 years ago, we started doing peer advisory, and the people that are listening to this call are CEOs that are involved in our peer advisory groups, or they're attached to Legendary in some way. And then they've also told that to their teams. So there's HR professionals on this call, there's operations directors on this call, and people that will be watching this video, you are the people that make it happen within the organization. And so that one little segment, training, that's what we're going to focus on today. And what we've discovered is that there's a grant, and we did this with Gulf Crane last year, and we discovered that it was a lot bigger than we thought. And so what is Legendary's heart? What are we all about? And what's my heart? We always want to add value, So we're going to expose you to this grant. And look, in Charlie and Brandon Bollinger, it was a 7-figure revenue grant. I mean, they've gotten over 7 figures in the past 10 years. And they've not only that, but they've invested in their workforce. And so this is very, very special. And so we want to expose you to this information. And then there's some programming that we do, but you may not do anything with us. And if that adds value to you, we accomplished our mission. If you do something with us, we accomplished our mission, and we were able to work together and serve you as well. So that's what this is all about. I want to start with Miss Yvette real quick. And lastly, I just want to let you know, too, we are going to send you, and it's attached in the chat, this Louisiana Workforce Commission one-pager, and it describes in very clear, vivid detail what this program is, who qualifies, and all that. That's going to be in the chat. Pam Rodriguez is going to put that in there. And then also the follow-up email, she's going to put in the chat as well. So if there's anybody we don't have their email addresses for, Pam, go ahead and do a private message to them now, like Annalise and Tammy, and say, hey, send me your email, and we'll make sure you're included in the follow-up email. So I'm going to start the segment with Miss Yvette. And Miss Yvette, I just want you to clearly, concisely explain, hey, where's it coming from? Who qualifies? And then I may bounce a couple of questions off you, and then we're going to go straight to Brandon to give a testimony for what he has experienced over the past 10 years. So, Miss Yvette?
Okay, good morning, everyone. There's actually 2 programs under this. It's the SBET, which is Small Business Employer Training Program for employers that have under 50, and then a customized grant, which is for employers that have over 15. So the amount of the companies that are on this call right now, are they over the 50? I mean, which program, or do you want to go?
We have representatives that have hundreds of employees on this phone call, and some there may be some that have less than 15. Legendary is one of them. So we have less than 15. So yeah,
so
you can speak to both.
Over both. So the Incumbent Worker Training Program is grant program that's been in existence for over 25 years. And what it is for both programs, the Small Business Employer and the IWTP Customized, is funded by the unemployment insurance taxes for Louisiana employers. So if you've been in business at least 3 years and in good standings with your unemployment taxes, you can qualify for grant training. The Small Business Employer is, you're spelling out specific people, what they're going to take and where, and then you would pay for the training and get reimbursed upon approval. The customized is you spell out what training you want to take and where and for what job titles. and they do want to see, you know, a return on their investment. So they do like to see wage increases. The number that you said you're going to train close to that. They have 4 goals: wage increases, additional jobs created, the number you said you were going to train, and the number retained. And if you complete your goals after the end of the 12-month period at 75% or better, you can just reapply. There's a little lapse time because the state has to close out the final grant, the one that just ended, pay the final invoice, review the quarterly report before you can reapply. But so there is probably about a 3 to 4 month lapse time in between grants if you completed successful and just want to roll back into the next one. A lot of times we'll do the application. We'll start the process before the final one ends. That way you're minimizing the lapse time at least. But anything that the state will generally pay about 200 to 250 for an 8-hour day of training. So anything above that, the state wouldn't pay. But anything that's in the grant, they would invoice. For example, we're the primary for Gulf Crane. Anything that Gulf Crane has in their grant, M&A gets invoiced for. We invoice the state the first week of every month. And then when we get paid by the state, which is normally 30 to 45 days, we cut checks to all the providers that are in that one invoice. So anytime Gulf Crane doesn't get invoiced for anything except for the employer contribution that the state will not pay. And then, but they still get their paperwork like they normally would, the roster, the certs and all that. So they get everything minus the invoice. Every now and then we'll see an auditor and they'll want to invoice how we keep our records. You know, they might sit in on a class. If they go Gulf Crane, they might want to see check stubs to prove that those employees were UI employees, you know, that unemployment taxes were paid on those individuals, because 1099 and contract employees will not qualify. Sometimes you'll have a company that pays taxes to more than one state. They might pay taxes on where employees live, where they work. Those employees are welcome to sit in the classes, but if they're not paying Louisiana unemployment taxes, the employer in that scenario would get charged for that training, no matter who the provider is. You have to do quarterly reports once the grant is funded, so we can track who's being trained, the hours, you know, and the wage increases. That's how the state monitors that the program works. And they take those quarterly reports to legislature so this program can get refunded and refunded continually every fiscal year. It can sometimes cover lodging if the employees are driving more than 50 miles from their normal work location. But you know, there's anything that's Louisiana provides in the state of Louisiana, it can cover a portion, at least some. And then it has to be done in the state unless it's e-learning. You know, if the Louisiana provider does not provide the training that you need and an out-of-state provider does, you can use that out-of-state provider, but this training has to be done in the state of Louisiana. They want to see the training dollars stay in the state. There's a few scenarios where once the grant's up and running that a training vendor might want payment when the training is scheduled. In that scenario, the grant will not cover it at that time until the training's complete. So we would just reimburse the employer when the state paid us. Instead of paying the provider, we would reimburse the employer what they paid that the grant covers. There's a database as well that shows, you know, if you're looking for particular training and not sure who offers it, there's a database that you can search by keyword, by provider. You know, I've done notary classes, computer classes, sales, professional development, like Legendary Leadership offers. It's unlimited as long as it pertains to those individuals' job duties. It can even reimburse in-house instruction for that instructor's hourly rate. So if, say you do a course once a month, once a week, whatever that instructor's hourly rate is for the amount of times he instructs, you can get reimbursed for that, as long as it's in the application. Once the application's approved, it's approved for 12 months. If there's a course that you need that's not in the grant, we can do a variation to get it approved. And that generally takes 3 to 5 days. And then once it's approved, then the training can take place. There's no retro, payments or anything like that. Um, and once it's approved, we send subcontracts out to all the providers so they know what documentation's needed, how much the state pays, how much the employer is responsible for. So there's no questions. They have the documents that are needed. Everything's up front, so there's no confusion. Once a grant is approved, each month we send the employer a matrix which shows the number of slots that are still available for each course, the money that's remaining in the grant. So when you meet the 6-month mark, you should have spent about half of your funding and be about halfway of meeting your goals. If not, we know we need to make sure we're on track. So everybody has a successful grant because, it's good for everybody. You could just reapply. It's a good way to enhance your training plan that's in place because a lot of, some companies do the bare minimum just to get by, to get on location for, clients, the client specifications and what they require. They're doing bare minimum, but this way you can get grant funding to enhance your program. So
Does that cover it, Ms.
I
Yvette?
think pretty much, unless y'all
Okay.
have any questions.
Well, I know that we are going to have lots of questions. You guys write
Mhm.
those down. Before I get into Brandon, because I want Brandon's going to give a testimony of what his experience has been. There was a couple things you said that I know people are thinking about. Number one, you said something about covering lodging. I don't remember reading that in the grant, but I'm happy that it does that. What is that? What do you mean by that? Like, if they go pay for their hotel for the training and the training was a day long and they had to come from Shreveport, Louisiana to Hammond, Louisiana, it'll reimburse them that lodging fee?
It's not that cut and dry, but so if they're going for more than 2 days of training, it will normally cover that night in between. It's not going to cover the night before or the last night. It has to be more than one day of training. And then it may reimburse meals if the employer is providing per diems for meals. But
Okay.
the only catch on the lodging is it will not cover training. It will not cover lodging for soft skills.
Okay. It's only for like
Yeah,
safety training, technical training, things like that.
technical. Yeah.
Okay, Roger. And then,
And then, so it gets more complicated than that. The application is a point system. So the higher the points, the higher approval rate is. So every month the state gets X amount of funding. They never know what it is, but the application with the highest points gets approved first on down the line till there's no funding left for that month.
Mhm.
But the lower your overall average is, which is the amount of funding you're requesting, divided by the number of employees that are on that grant to be trained, the lower the overall average is, the more points you get. So if you're adding lodging, that's increasing your funding that you're asking for, so that would lower your points. So it all depends on, we plug everything in on, especially a first applicant, everything in that they want. And then we see, if we need to cut or something's not, way out of range, we'll address it before we submit it. And nothing's set in stone until that application is approved by the state. Then they send a contract that the designated employee of the employer signs. The primary training provider that's writing the grant, plus the state. It's a signed contract. So you can make changes, withdraw the application, whatever you want before that contract's done. And when the contract's done, that just specifies the start date and how much you're awarded.
Mhm.
But that is, you still have flexibility after that of adding providers. You just can't ask for more money. You have to move money from within something that's already approved and use that funding to add. So,
Okay. Which, by the way, that happened, ladies and gentlemen, that happened last
yes.
year with Brandon. They were like, here's the overall pot that we have
Mhm.
applied for. And he said, let's move this and do this and that. And they were flexible. They utilized Yvette because M&A, even though they're a safety training company, they were the primary. That's what Yvette keeps saying, the primary, which just means that you could consider it like a general contractor or the grant writer. And so
Correct.
they understand all the compliance requirements. And so they get a percentage that's really awarded to them by the state. The state allows a certain percentage for the grant writer. And so the reason I have Miss Yvette on here is because we had multiple phone calls last year. She took every single one of them, was very patient with us and our team, and went through the program and made sure that we were 100% compliant, which made sure that we were all paid. And so I just thought that it was excellent. So
Yes.
thank you for that.
Oh, no, thank
Miss
you.
Yvette.
Phil, I have a question, if I may. Is this the appropriate time for questions?
Yeah, that's fine.
Sure.
We can ask some questions before we get into Brandon's segment. Yes.
So if I'm of small.
Oh man. Hey, Kevin, you're breaking up. Restate your question.
Let me break this down in small bite chunks here for me. If I wanted to invest in my lead team with Legendary, that's the initiative. Do I go to you and tell you what my goals are, and then you handle the mechanics of telling me what that looks like, how much funding can come to my healthcare system to subsidize that training?
Yes,
Yvette,
sir.
let me jump in there real quick.
Mhm.
We're at the end of this. I'm going to do a next steps communication, and basically what we're going to say is anybody that's interested in doing training in this program, we will serve by allowing a discovery call with Miss Yvette. So what we would like to do is Pam, Yvette, Kelly, and whatever representative from the company will get on a Zoom call, and we would have a discovery call. And as long as I don't have any confidential information, HR-wise, then we would go and gather that information, find out what the needs, it's like a needs assessment for the training and all that kind of stuff. And then Miss Yvette and us will work collaboratively to make sure that the program fits and can satisfy.
And one other thing to mention, we don't charge to write a grant or submit it, because like we get everything that's invoiced to the state once it's approved, even if we don't have any training in it, the state automatically tacks on 10% of that invoice to facilitate the payments and the reporting and everything.
Right. Thank you for that, Miss Yvette. Great question, Kevin.
Yes.
Anybody else before we go into Brandon? I know you do have some questions, and sure, write them down, but anybody anything pressing? Okay, well, last year we again did this program. Thank you, Miss Yvette, with Brandon. He connected us with M&A, and Miss Yvette and I got on the phone with our whole team, and it was really remarkable. I mean, it was tens of thousands of dollars worth of tremendous training. I mean, we did DISC, Strength Finders, conflict resolution, and situational leadership with his entire leadership team. And there were 33 people in his whole leadership team among all the companies that participated in that. That training would have been $100,000 all day long. And he got, he got it pretty much reimbursed by the state. The state paid for it. And that was just a fraction of the training that they did for their company and have been doing for 10 years. So Brandon, you could take it away and give your, maybe like the next 7 minutes or so. I want to leave some time for questions.
So I'm going to give the big view of it so y'all understand. I believe it's for any company. The health insurance situation you just mentioned, I know it'll fit. Because when I looked at it originally, when we decided to go, and it's about 12, 13 years ago when we started it, I had safety training that was required from me from the oil companies. And Bo would understand that if he's on the call. You have to have water survival. You have to have fall protection. You have to have confined spaced entry. There's a lot of things that are required for us to have. So either I go out to M&A that offers this, they're just one of the many companies that offer that type training, or I create that internal and do it myself. That's the kind of training I would originally started with, safety training for us. So I went and I was spending $40,000 to $50,000 a year on that. Okay. So I went when we originally wrote our grant, and we went big the first time, probably shouldn't have went quite as big just because I was like, oh, all this is out here. I want technical training. I want safety training. Our first grant was around $100,000. Well, then you have to do it. So your challenge is going to be time for your employees to be able to do that. But that's okay, because you end up figuring out how to do it. So what we did was we look at our required training as one part that we have to be able to work in the oil field. Then we looked at okay, what do we want to enhance our employees with? We have Detroit diesel training, Cummins training, overhead hoist training, all these different types of technical training that we were able to go get. So we wrote, again, got our grant completed. All that was in there. And then we may have gotten halfway through the grant and be like, you know what? We don't, the safety training we're on track with, but we need more technical training. Then we were able to bring other things back in, like she's talking about, once you get approved and get that grant, then get that training approved. For example, we work on loading arms that are on the Mississippi River. They're out of France, the only company that does that training. So we had to bring them from France to Louisiana to be able to do this type of training inside Louisiana at our facility. Okay, it cost $30-something thousand to bring that guy over here and do that training. Well, we were able to figure out a way through the grant and get strategic, just like what we did with Phil with Legendary Leadership, of how can we figure out, put enough people through it, because it takes the numbers of people through the per day price to get your value up to be able to make it worthwhile somebody coming in and do the training. Okay, so if you have 10 people on average at $250 a day, that's $2,500 a day that you can get paid by the grant, most likely to train 10 people. Well, if that's 10 days of training, that's $25,000 available. Now, you may have to do 2 days here, 3 days here, 2 days here. That's where you have to get strategic. That's where Philip and them got strategic with the vet and said, how can we do this? How can we put 33 people in here? That gives us the bulk of numbers that we need to get the amount of dollars that we're after, and then make it all happen. I know I'm jumping around, but ultimately that's how we've done it strategically, which is, and we've averaged $100,000 a year for over 12 years getting this money. Okay, well, that all goes to your bottom dollar ultimately, because I was having to spend 50 and we're 250 people now. So when you look at most of my group as offshore people, I have to pay for that training no matter what. We're on the other side as well. We do crane and rigger training, and so M&A can come to us if somebody needs crane and rigger training, like Blake or somebody else, and we can do their training, and the grant pays us to do it. Also, if you have an internal trainer, you heard her today, that you can, allowed to do training for you, you can be reimbursed for their time. So I didn't even know that. I learned that today. So I'm going to be figuring that out. And my HR team at this point, Brittany and Michelle, they actually handle it all. I used to handle the whole grant myself. I used to write the grant. And don't be scared about the increase of wages and all those other things, because ultimately, I was telling Philip earlier, a lot of that kind of works itself out, because the increase it's very minimal that you have to give, but it kind of happens in your normal business where you have newer people coming in, and it goes on the whole group that you're giving increases to, not just the people that went through the training. Okay, so I'm not trying to say that's a loophole. I'm just telling you, it doesn't always have to be just specific to the people that get the training. It's your whole company's looked at. Okay, and so we've never had a problem meeting the percentages. We've never had a problem meeting the increases that need to happen. And then you have to also get creative inside your company to look at ways that grow your people, right? So if I have a guy that goes through Detroit training, he's an engine mechanic. Well, then he gets hoist training. Well, that has created another line of work for him to do inside his own job. So now I can create another job duty for him, and you write that as part of the grant. The leadership style, a little bit different, but ultimately my team worked it out. I'm not even sure exactly how we did it all with the leadership training, because I wasn't involved, because my HR team handles it now. Ultimately, I'm like, figure it out. Okay. And then they come to me when they get to the bumps in the road, and they may say, hey, I don't think we could do that. I'm like, hold on. We need to look at this angle or this angle of how we can do it, because I've been doing the grant 10 years. So, and that's where Yvette comes in. She can give you the borders to stay inside the lanes of what you can do and what you can't do. But you also, as a business owner or CEO or HR team, you need to be creative. Don't take no for an answer. I don't take no for an answer. When it comes to, we can't do this, I'm like, hold on. Just like Paris, France, I was told, no, they're in Paris, or no, they're in Houston. I'm like, well, there's no other training in Louisiana that covers this. So bring them from France, bring them from Houston to come do this training. Now they've got e-learning. So now we have the e-learning ability to be able to say, we can do it from anywhere as long as it's e-learning. So that's another thing that's come since when we started, they didn't have e-learning. So everybody had to come to our place in Louisiana to do the training.
And virtual.
I don't doubt that Louisiana, that's why they do the grant, to grow yourself, grow the people in Louisiana, grow our group. And I don't know that other states may not offer this. I would think there may be programs in your state. And I use this for example, and I told Philip this, we have programs through USDA in farming where we sign up for a couple $100,000 a year that we get on all kind of different things. So I think that's, don't not, if you're outside of Louisiana, even look at the program, because I'm sure they're available. So that's kind of my spiel, Phil. I can answer any questions. Miss Vet, I think you had something maybe, in case I was out of
I
line.
just wanted, no. I just wanted to bring up virtual too as another option that they started, after COVID and everything, instead of e-learning, as opposed to e-learning too. And then
We wanted to talk about that too. Miss Yvette, you have something else real quick?
Brandon was talking about wage increases, not to be scared. It's true, because that doesn't mean every employee trained on the grant has to have a wage increase. They look at the overall average on the quarterly reports. But what some companies do is for their new hires, hire them at like 25 cents or so less an hour, send them to the training, and then bump them up where they would normally be without grant training.
Normally your new hires in their first 5 years, that's when they're growing, right? In their salary. So ultimately you utilize those if you can to hit your mark in a lot of cases. I'm not saying you don't want to increase your other people that are going through your leadership training, because ultimately I've seen some of my team at this point, because of leadership training, they're actually become better leaders, and we can move them around the company because they've been through, conflict and different things. My team never experienced any of that. I told Philip, I'm like, you're giving it to the CEOs, but we need to be hitting my management team is the ones that need it, right? And I'm not saying we don't either, because I needed it myself. And I grow with it. My wife tells me, you need everyone Philip has, you need to get involved in it. I never forget, Philip told me originally when I first met him, he's like, why do you get so passionate, get upset with people? You really don't have to holler at people, Brandon. And I stepped back and it changed my life forever. So y'all know, I realized, you know what, even though I'm passionate, even though I'm who I am, hollering gets nowhere with people at all. That's not leadership. And so Philip taught me that from the first day we ever talked about, when he was doing it for Pelican, when you were doing the same thing. And so, and my team had come accustomed to me being that way, and I had to change that completely. And by knowing Philip and going through this training that I've done and all I've been through, I've become a better leader. I know I have. My team's like, you're not even the same person, as you were, because of this type of that you get paid for. And I couldn't have done that just paying it out of our normal budget, probably. Right. And so you got to go after things like this as a business owner. It's the edge, right? It puts you on above and beyond the normal. I tell people all the time, they're like, what do you think about your competitors? I'm like, I don't think about my competitors. I think about Gulf Crane, and my team and growing my team. And so that's a lot of what I've received from that. Me and my dad.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, we talked about that. This really is what I love about Charlie Bollinger and Brandon Bollinger is they fight for every dollar. And I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, and if you guys are HR professionals on this call and you're representing an organization, trust me, in this day of inflation, rising rates, the squeeze in every area of our businesses, the dollar's not worth is what it was just yesterday. I'm just telling you, you have to fight for every single dollar. And so if the state is going to offer grants, they have no problem taking the money for the taxes. You better, we better go after it. And so y'all can become the hero in your organization for doing that. Miss Yvette, thank you again, Brandon. That was so good. We have a couple more questions just from me, and then I want to take them from the audience. So if you do have a question, just put your hand up, do the whole raise your hand feature, and we'll call on you. But there was a public versus private training. This is something that Yvette told us last year. We didn't do it, but this is a combined training. So let's say that you only have 20 employees, but then these other companies have 500, another one has this, and we do a combined online or live training. As long as they've qualified with you, Miss Yvette, with the state, applied for the grant, and then said, I'll come on that date and send these 10 employees, they can be a part of that combined training, correct?
Correct.
And then they just have to get the roster with all the information filled out, signed, and then sent back to you, correct?
Correct. Because like when, for example, Golf Crane comes to our facility, we have other grant clients in that same course. So we just get each client to sign their own roster.
Okay,
It's
that's
not a
great.
problem. Yep.
And then what we did for Golf Crane is we had a virtual instructor, state of Louisiana, and he went and trained. His name is Chris McLean. He's a master certified trainer with the Center for Leadership Studies. He did the 4 different trainings. And when Chris did that, he was virtual, but the team was live. And some of them did watch it online because they just couldn't get to the Covington office where Golf Crane was. And so they all signed the roster. Training was complete. It was all translated. And then we sent it to Miss Yvette. She gathered all the signatures, got us compliant, and got us a check 30, 45 days later. And so there are 2 things that Legendary is toying with. I think we're going to end up doing a combined training 3 or 4 times a year with great topics and have the speakers in there, the trainers in there with the content all day, and we'll load up the facilities for anybody that wants to come. And then, Miss Yvette, can they have it where, let's say I got 100 people can fit at the Southern Hotel. We have 100 in the ballroom, but maybe 200 online watching. Can that happen?
Yes. So on the quote, when you quote it, you're specifying if it's instructor led or e-learning, or computer based. So as long as it says instructor led, it's good no matter where it's held. Even there, if there's a change, in the application we put, if it's going to be at the employer site, but if you decide to do it at, a hotel in Louisiana, that's fine as well. It'll still pay the same amount.
Okay, that's excellent. And then there were the 2 different tests were wage increase. You got to prove wage increase, and you got to prove what? Job improvement. Is that right?
Additional jobs created. There's 4
Okay.
goals. It's additional jobs created, which is somebody obtaining grant training, getting promoted, and a wage increase, and somebody backfilling that open position. So a lot of times that'll, like helpers, for example, if you're doing a shop helper to a shop hand, or mechanic, and you hire somebody else to fill in that backfill, that's 1 additional job created. Now the wage increases and the promotions, grant training has to take place first. So some grants, if a supervisor's getting promoted next month with a wage increase, send them to Medic First Aid or a Legendary course, something, if he has that time available to attend, because other than that, you can't report it.
Okay.
If he didn't attend grant training prior to.
And Brandon has a very unique way of doing this, where if he goes and bills ExxonMobil or whatever, Royal Dutch Shell for let's just say a senior mechanic. Well, inside the company, he has an internal classification for that mechanic. A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And so that's what he's reporting to the state, is the internal classification of that person's training and competence and skill, not external to Chevron or Shell. There's a big distinguishing differentiator, because you don't have to prove that it's to the public facing that the person has been promoted. It's that internally they're moving up. That's what the state wants to make sure of, that this training is improving their life. Technically, it's improving your workforce in pay, in their skill, and all that. Right, Brandon?
That's correct. And
Yes.
ultimately, you're trying to grow more, you're hiring more people.
Mhm.
So because you're, creating better people, you have a more need we all know there's always a need for better people. So, and we've never not met the mark. So don't
Right.
think it's like something you got to get into and be scared about. We're a normal company inside Louisiana that was all field based, that I saw a need. We did it, and you just walk through it, and you'll figure out a way to walk through it. And if you get into it and you get to struggling, then call me or call somebody that's done it before, and we can help you with that. We can help you look at different angles and ways to utilize the money and utilize it quickly sometimes.
Yeah.
Because that's what you have to do. You have to pivot sometimes during the
Right.
grant. And
Well,
so,
and
go ahead.
Do we have a question? Michael, did you take your speaker on for, you have a question? Okay, Michael he's just unmuted, but all right. So look, Seth and Michael, they have like 2,200 employees, but they got 780 in the state of Louisiana. And so I guess what I heard you say, Miss Yvette, is it's e-learning, which means that it's a recorded module that tracks their absorption of it, right? Or their utilization of it. And then
self-paced.
what's that?
Self-paced is what.
Self-paced. So we're going to look into that for some of the soft skills and maybe even some technical ones as well because of my security background. And then there's the virtual training, which just means it's just an online live communicator. And then there's live, but those can be combined and different people can just sign up for it.
Mhm.
And as long as they are pre-qualified with you and they've already applied for their grant money, then they could utilize those dollars for that. And they could have, you guys can actually administrate that, keep them compliant and write the checks.
Correct.
Okay. So the next step, by the way, are there any questions? I want to take 5-10 minutes. Any questions? If you have some, raise your hand. We're going to call on you. If not, we're going to go into next steps.
I just wanted to mention what Brandon was saying, completing successfully. That's why we do the quarterly reports, to make sure we're staying on track. And at the end, towards the end, like the last 4, 5, 6 months, if we see where any issues, that we can address them to make sure everybody completes successfully. The only time we really had issues where they weren't was when they were having a layoff, and decrease everybody's pay. You're not going to meet your goals. But in that case, just spend it like as much as you can and sit out for the 12 months. You're not penalized, or fined if you don't.
Even during COVID, when
Yep.
we had never laid off people at Gulf Crane in existence of 40 something years, we had to lay off some helpers. And
Mhm.
even with that, we just waited 2 or 3 months before we applied again, once things got to where we knew we would be okay. And we applied for a lot less money that year. It didn't mean we quit. We just pivoted. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yep.
And
And so I encourage you to not be scared, not pivot, and not just go after what you can do best in your first grant. Don't try and bite off. I bit off way too much in my first grant. I did 100 and something thousand, and we just did. I was so excited about all these people getting trained, and then all my workers were working, so they couldn't go through the
Mhm.
training. So then I'm like, oh my goodness, what I'm gonna do? And you need to know your busy times of the year, right? Like mine in January and February, my team, when we have the least going on. So we try and schedule that technical training when our guys are in. That's when we hit it. Is when our least busy time of the year is. We
That's
never schedule training during the summer because our guys are offshore every day. Just about.
Right.
That's when we may hit our management staff.
Gotcha.
Summer.
So Dr. Shea, real quick, what's your question? And if you did you have a question? I saw you raise your hand.
Yeah. So I have a smaller team of combined couple of different combined companies and maybe about 20 people and stuff. Does it fit for that smaller organization as well?
Miss
And
Yvette,
then
you
what
can
if-
take that.
Yeah, so you could do a consortium. Are they all under the same tax ID number?
No, there's two
Okay.
different tax ID numbers.
Okay, so you could still do a combined application. And so I mentioned points earlier, so you get points for a job posting if you've hired somebody receiving unemployment. In that scenario, you only need to do like one job posting. You don't need to do one for each company. So there's advantages to doing a consortium. You would have one quarterly report to manage. Everything would be funneled into that one grant.
Good.
Yeah.
Was the other question, Shay?
Well, we have 3 companies. We have Patrick Fab OES and Gulf Crane, and I want to say now we've included them all, right, in what we're doing, or just OES and Gulf Crane. Ms. Yvette?
Yeah, Miss Yvette, that was Brandon asking you that question. All right, we might have lost Miss Yvette. Real quick, I want to talk
I'm
about,
pretty sure though, I'm pretty sure what she was saying though, is like if you own the two companies, because of a common ownership or whatever, you can apply more than one company together. That way you get, you know, like you say, if you have 20 employees, it's 10 and 10 and each, then it'll add up on the numbers. So,
Roger.
and she,
Okay, great.
All right, Miss Yvette did come back on. Real quick, I want to talk about next steps, just so we got about 10 minutes left. You know, Church of the King is on here. They got 150 employees, maybe more than that. And they pay unemployment and tax, but they're a 501c3 with church status. Miss Yvette, they qualify? You can unmute Miss Yvette.
My electricity just flashed. It's beautiful outside. I don't know what the deal is, but I had to connect to my phone. It's crazy.
Well, thank
Um,
you for doing that. Yeah, Church of the King's a 501c3. They got about 150 employees, maybe more, and they have church status. Do they qualify? They pay
They pay
unemployment.
Louisiana unemployment taxes. Yes.
Okay. So that's
Yeah.
good. I wanted to ask that question. The second thing I want to talk about is next steps. The next steps for us, Miss Yvette has been so helpful. And so we're willing to offer our time to serve you. We would love for you to do some of our training, but you may not. And if you don't, we still added value in one. So what we're willing to do is a discovery call combined with Miss Yvette and us, our team, with you and your team to discover your needs. What is the makeup of your employee base? What are the needs for training? What's already approved out there? We'll actually go through the database with you to show you the state approved vendors. We're one of them. And then from there, Miss Yvette will say, okay, here's the process. And she'll come on as like that, I guess you call it a primary. And she'll say, here, this is what we can do. You don't even pay Miss Yvette. The state tax on 10% of the grant and pays them to administer it and keep it compliant. And so she has been invaluable to us, and I know to Golf Crane. So, but that's our next step. And what we're going to do is we're going to have an email that goes out inviting you into that discovery call with Miss Yvette and our team. Does that sound good, everybody? And so, if you had questions, for instance, on Michael and Seth, y'all's and Tammy, y'all's company, that's a lot of employees, and we may end up doing a hybrid where it's module based for some, where they do it at their leisure because they're all shift work. The majority of these people are shift work. And so by the way, that's the same with Kevin Schneider, because again, a lot of his nurses are shift work. So this is technical training, which could include skill competency for their technical job in addition to safety. Then it's also soft skills, which is leadership development, culture, team building, organizational development, all that. And we have an entire list. Some of the things that we presented to Golf Crane last year and this year that we'll be doing is strength finders, DISC, 5 dysfunctions of a team, 6 working geniuses. That's hot off the press. We got trained by Patrick Lencioni for that. 5 capitals, time management, priority management, email etiquette, negotiation, professionalism, conflict resolution, situational leadership, and decision-making grid. So we have all kinds of different training that we offer for your leaders and all for your general team. And so this is, and that's just, look, we're one little bitty vendor within the state. Okay. So we just want to be able to open up this grant to you because you pay that money every month or every quarter. And so we want to make it available to you. Miss Yvette?
That's exactly right. It's your own taxpayers' money.
Yes. So why not, right? So that
Exactly.
the email will go out inviting you into a next steps discovery call with Miss Yvette and with our team, and we'll learn more about you and how we can serve you, and then how you can get apply for all this grant money. And then I just want to end by saying this: we are going to do 2 or 3 this year public events. Some people will pay cash, you guys won't. You'll get reimbursed by the state. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to start to fill event centers with this training and add value to our community of leaders. This is what we want to do. And so in there, if you've already applied and you got your grant granted to you, Miss Yvette will show you, okay, this is what you got in the grant. That will work, and she can guide you in the whole process. Amen?
That's correct.
All right. Okay, well, I just want to say thanks again for being on the call. Anything else before we go? Annalise, Tammy, y'all are good? Christy?
Yeah, no questions here.
Okay, well, if you guys get on that discovery call, we will go and see how we can serve you more and let you know how this grant can apply to you. You know, with that many employees, you know, Michael, Seth, and Christy and Annalise, that's a lot of employees. And you guys do this training already, you just pay for it yourself. And so this is a way to get that paid for. And by the way, I didn't realize the whole internal thing. So a lot of your training, you have internal instructors. So some of your payroll could be impacted by that, even if it wasn't Legendary doing it, it's you guys doing it. So while we want to be very respectful of your time, end on time, and I want to tell you thanks for taking your Friday for this call. Miss Yvette, thank you for investing in all of these people and for everything you do. And Brandon, really brilliant. Again, you and Charlie are the best when it comes to this. There's nobody better. And so thanks for being here and giving that testimony of how this program works.
Thanks for letting us come. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you for including us.
Have a great weekend, everybody.